Canadians have some pretty negative stereotypes of Americans. And let's be honest, stereotypes exist for a reason because they're usually true. Am I wrong about that? I'm going to go over the top 5 stereotypes Canadians have of Americans. When millions of people are saying the same thing about a particular group of people or a country, no matter how ridiculous those claims are, you got to wonder if it's true. I challenged some perceptions, and I made a few people angry in the video I made about what Americans think of Canadians. And the elephant in the room here is Trump's suggestion that Canada becomes a 51st state. That's not what this video is about, even though that whole discussion is getting pretty intense.
Canada and the United States, that would really be something.
So to be fair, I figured I'd switch this one up. Instead of what Americans think of Canadians, in this video, I'm going to go over what Canadians think of Americans. 5 most common stereotypes Canadians have about Americans. And I'm going to provide you with all my sources of this information as well. Some of the clips I included, they really kind of rubbed me the wrong way, implying Canadians are weak and passive, boring. A land of 40 million socialists.
So no, I don't want to take over Canada. I don't want to absorb 40 million socialists.
Now, Canada is much larger than the US, more landmass. You see how I worded that? Diplomatically. If I said Canada is bigger than the US, we're bigger than you, then that would set some people off. And I'm trying to play nice here. However, the US has a lot more people. Canada has around 40 million people, and the US has around 400 million people. 40 million to 400 million. And I'm not going to get into Canada versus US in terms of military and armed conflict in this video, which is unlikely anyways, and it wouldn't go so well. You should see the comments and, from Canadians about their past military contributions, mentioning Canada's role in both the World Wars, the Geneva Convention, the idea that Canadians shouldn't be underestimated when pushed too far. Some comments are basically taunting Americans to push us too far and see what we're capable of. When I turned 18, I became a man, and I felt like it. I couldn't wait to get out on my own. I worked hard. I bought my first car when I was 15, before I had a license. 25-year-olds today, they're still referred to as youth. They live at home. They still rely on their parents for pretty much everything. Are you going to rely on them in a conflict? There was a poll yesterday on X asking if you would take up arms to defend Canada. What arms? The government banned most of them and did their best to take them away. All right, let's have a little bit of fun here. This is getting too serious. This video is the top 5 stereotypes that Canadians have about Americans. I want to go over some of the obvious ones first. These aren't included in the top 5 because they're things that we pretty much know are fact. Canadians are friendlier, seen as more socially conscious and polite than Americans. You hear that a lot. Canadians are more polite. Canada's safer. If you're traveling, you'll get more respect saying that you're Canadian than if you say you're American, because Canadians are seen as more kind. But as the saying goes, don't mistake our kindness for weakness. Canada's peaceful, but not weak. If you're an American, are you mad at me yet? All right, let's get into it. And I'll share how I came up with this list, which you might find very interesting. Number 1, loud and proud. Many Canadians view Americans as confident, outspoken, and way more patriotic, sometimes to the point of being over the top. Whether it's waving flags, celebrating achievements, or debating politics, Americans have a reputation for making their presence known. I can agree with that. I get around and I see way more communities in the U.S. where every second house has a U.S. flag proudly displayed out front than I do in Canada. But I have to throw in a counter argument as well. I lived from one coast to another, and I travel. So I say this with complete conviction. The city and the country, meaning more rural areas, are completely different. In the country, you see way more pickup trucks with big flags being held on by hockey sticks driving around. More homes have flag poles. It's very different. People are more likely to show their patriotism. It depends on where you live. Canada is too big to lump everyone together, same as the U.S. Number 2, freedom, but at what cost? Americans love their freedom, naturally, but Canadians sometimes question the cost of that mindset, from lack of universal health care to expensive education. The U.S. is seen as a place where you can achieve anything, but you better have the money to back it up. A recurring theme is Canadians valuing their health care system and social safety nets, in contrast to the U.S., where many people can't afford medical care. Well, that's where the 40 million socialist comment comes from, I suppose. A conservative or a liberal in Canada is very different than a conservative or liberal in the U.S. And the fact is, Canada does have more safety nets. Question for you. If Canadian healthcare is so good, then why do so many Canadians choose to pay privately for their own health care, or they travel to the US and pay on their own for life-saving treatment that either it's not available in Canada or the waiting list is so long that your condition would worsen and you'd probably never even make it. I'm genuinely asking because this is not in my wheelhouse. I know a thing or two about a thing or two, but I'm certainly no expert in healthcare. But you should be able to ask these questions without being labeled as troublesome or not being patriotic like you see online in some of the comments. It's okay to criticize your system. How else are you supposed to grow? All I keep hearing about is there's a shortage of doctors. Wait times are terrible, and it's not getting any better anytime soon. Surgeries have been canceled. Just because it's free doesn't mean it's the best, or doesn't mean it can't be fixed. Number 3, firearm laws and the Second Amendment. One of the biggest cultural differences is America's gun culture. Canadians tend to see the U.S. as a place where guns are everywhere, making it a frequent topic of discussion and concern. To Canadians, America's obsession with guns is wild. Open carry and the idea that more firearms equal more safety is a concept most Canadians can't wrap their heads around. Well, I'd say this is fair. So from the outside looking in, seeing the influence of the NRA during an election season, I can see why this came up. But I'm going to add this, and I say this with complete certainty. More Canadians want similar laws to the U.S. in terms of the Second Amendment than people realize. I made a video about it, and I provide sources and proof. I grew up around firearms, hunters, police, including my own career, so I'm used to it. It's not a big deal to me. But Canadians are making it more known every day that the current government, they've just gone too far in terms of firearms restrictions. Number 4, fast food and big portions. Americans are often associated with supersized meals, an abundance of fast food chains, and an overall bigger is better mentality. Well, this makes sense. I already said that Canada's bigger than America. We're bigger than you, so you have to make up for it in other ways. Honestly, I don't know if this is true or not. Maybe it was at one point, but I'm not too sure. Maybe this resonates with me because I just love eating junk. Number 5, friendly but unaware. Canadians generally find Americans warm and welcoming, but there's a stereotype that they know very little about Canada. Canadians are often amused or annoyed when Americans assume Canada is just America's attic or that it's always cold. Well, that's kind of like what Canadians think of Russia because of Rocky IV. Canadians perceive Americans as being focused mostly on their own country, often unaware of global affairs, including their northern neighbor. There's a common sentiment that many Americans don't even realize some of their favorite celebrities are Canadian. I would say that there's probably a lot of Canadians who don't realize that their favorite celebrities are Canadian either. So listen, one of the most common comments in the video about what Americans think of Canadians was, who gives a damn what Americans think of us? And I'm pretty sure that that'll be mentioned more than once or twice in this video. So how did I come up with this list anyways? I used AI to look at the comments of 2 different videos, what Americans think of Canadians and are Canadians jealous of Americans. Hundreds and hundreds of comments, and it provided me with a common theme. And then I asked for the top 5 stereotypes that Canadians think of Americans based off the comments, and it provided me with the list. So it came from people like you who comment. It was also similar. It aligned with what I was seeing in the comments, so I decided to go for it. There's a few different programs that you can do this with. I don't know the name of the program that I used. Use whoever you want. This isn't sponsored, this video. Nobody sponsors me. Maybe they'll sponsor me. Popcorn twists from Old Dutch, wherever Old Dutch is. I think I got that from the dollar store. That's who I actually wanted to sponsor, the dollar store. I'll put a big dollar store logo behind me. Popcorn twists for days. Listen, I would love to know your thoughts on this. The good, the bad, the ugly. I covered a lot. Be safe out there. Look after one another, and perhaps we will see you again.